Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, You Want Me to Sue? Well, if you insist. So here is another lawyer story I hope you enjoy. None of the following is legal advice, and I am not your lawyer. On to the story. A friend from school reached out to ask for help dealing with an ambulance company. Her parent had passed away in an ambulance while traveling between a nursing home and a hospital. The ambulance company sent friend a bill which she could not afford to pay and was threatening to send the bill to collectors. Not a problem, friend. Your parents' estate is responsible for this bill. You don't have a personal obligation to pay it, and so they can't send it to collections in your name. Let me just mail a short letter, and they should stop bothering you. I typed a very polite letter. This person has legal representation. Please cease any and all shenanigans, and thought that was the end of this nonsense. Fast forward a few weeks when friends sent a picture of another bill. Because the law is so cut and dry on debt collection, I assumed the ambulance company had some computer or human error which caused another letter to be sent. No worries, friend, I bet someone messed up. Let me give them a call real quick and figure it out. Imagine a super cool montage of me working through a really long automated phone tree before talking to an actual human. Hey, I'm friend's lawyer. I sent a letter asking you to stop sending her collections notices. She got another notice yesterday, so I just wanted to figure out why and how to make sure these letters stop. Surely this will be a quick call and we can all have a laugh about whatever error occurred. I think we will stop sending her bills when she pays. But that's pretty illegal for like a lot of reasons. I can think of 3 right off the top of my head. So instead of me getting all riled up and starting a lawsuit, can you just be cool? Pretty please? It's not illegal. Try to sue us if you want our lawyers to explain it to you. She made me say the phrase that I hate more than any other phrase in the world. May I speak with your manager, please? Nope, I am the manager, and also more familiar with the FDCPA than you. What we are doing is perfectly legal. Tell your friend to pay. So the FDCPA, Federal Debt Collection Practices Act, sets out certain rules for what debt collectors can or cannot do. But some states, like TX, shocking I know, have stronger rules which protect debtors. I didn't know whether or not ambulance company was violating any FDCPA things, but I knew for sure, and when a good lawyer says for sure, that means 100% for sure, they were violating TDCPA. Telling me I don't know what I'm doing is rude. Hassling friend after parent passed away is shockingly rude. So last chance before I hang up to angry type a lawsuit and angry file it. You don't want me to sue on this because I will win. Please do, and we will see you in court. Have a nice day. Click. She hung up on me. Oh man, I was upset. Easily in the top 10 of upset in a professional context. The whole conversation took about 10 minutes. I have a fairly high tolerance for abrasive people. Most people don't look forward to talking with a lawyer, I get it. Still, sending collection notices to the wrong person after that person buried a parent and telling me I'm a bad lawyer was pretty mind-blowing. I literally started working on this complaint as soon as I hung up. Because if I threaten to sue and you ask me follow through, my hands are tied. After I filed and the company was served, presumably followed by an actual lawyer reading the complaint and thinking, oh wow, we fucked up here. A very apologetic lawyer called, and we reached an agreement to settle, which including an apology to friend. Next one is titled, Work All Night. Okay. I used to work in the legal industry as a junior paralegal. My boss was horrible. She had a long history of abusive behavior toward her subordinates. Once she informed me that I wasn't paid to make decisions. I was paid to follow orders. There was a case that was closing soon. Attorneys were expected to work all night on it, so she asked me to go home early and return to work in the middle of the night to be available all night. I got back and there was nobody else there at all. I had some filing that I could work on, but only about an hour, and I was there for about 10 hours, but I was told to stay there all night, so I did. When she got to work the next morning, I let her know I was here and looked for the attorneys, but nobody was here and nobody told me they didn't need me. I thought maybe they may come back. So I stayed. She was upset that I didn't just go home, and she complained that I didn't have billable hours for that time. She made an ugly comment to the effect of, "At some point you should have decided to go home." I said, "Per your email, I am not paid to make decisions. I am paid to follow orders. You told me to be here all night." I had the receipts. She could do nothing. Later, she tried to assign me to a case that was a conflict of interest due to household employment. I disclosed it and she got mad and demanded my resignation on my birthday. I told her no and went to HR. She told HR I was a terrible employee and none of the attorneys liked me. So, I showed HR the emails from the attorneys that contradicted her. I ended up transferring to a different group. I had a kid and took maternity pay and then quit. She continued on with others the way she did with me and wound up getting fired. It took a while, but she did have a consequence. Next one is titled, "Want me to just ignore your bug because you're slightly senior than me?" Alright bud. First I just want to say, I've been an avid reader of this sub for a long time and I love the stories people tell here. Finally today I have the opportunity to tell one of mine. Here it goes. I work as a developer in a company that creates very fast automated systems for moving around money electronically. So obviously we have very strict testing and error checking for any code that goes in a production system. And I'm one of the guys who do this verification. So 3 months ago I found a little bug in a patch that was written by this one other guy who had been working at the company for only a year longer than me. He has the title of senior developer while I'm just a developer. It didn't really make any difference though, that was just something you get with a small pay raise once you do 3 years at the company as a developer. Anyway, I noticed this bug, email him and tell him about it so he can fix it and resubmit the patch. But he turns the responsibility on me, tells me his code is correct and that I'm just testing it incorrectly. I try to explain to him but he doesn't budge. Tired of the pointless arguing, I suggest that we should clear it out with our project manager. At this point he pulls the seniority card and says I should just do as he says because I'm his junior. Now that just upsets me. This guy has absolutely no authority over me, who does he think he is? Cue malicious compliance. I knew that the bug would not manifest itself immediately, there were certain conditions that had to be met for it to show itself in a production environment. And it didn't do anything wrong, it would just crash the system unexpectedly. I asked him one final time in the email thread whether he's sure he wants me to go ahead with the patch. He says yes. Alright, yay. Now we have buggy code running on a production machine which moves $1 million every minute. Nothing happened for 3 months, life was as usual. Then last week it finally happened. Our system crashed. Well, we have protections set up for such failures that roll back the binaries automatically. However, the crash still cost the company a few hours of downtime, which means potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. The crash was traced back to the patch that Mr. Senior Developer had written. I had the email trail to absolve myself of fault. The resolution was quick, and needless to say, Mr. Senior Developer no longer works with us now. Next one is titled, "You want me to do something that completely violates the terms and conditions?" Okay, say bye to your promotion. I was hired as a robotics process automation engineer at this relatively large company that operates in several countries worldwide. My job was to create bots and scripts to free up our workers from the mindless, repetitive, manual tasks for them to be more useful doing activities they require critical thinking and actual brainpower. I was still fairly new to the company, about 4 months in, and was doing quite a good job of automating report generation, email sending, data input, etc. Now my supervisor has been gunning for a promotion for about 2 years at this point and shared with me that one of his targets is a certain number of USD in cost savings, which is why he hired me. He crunched the numbers and determined that if I automate the manual extraction of customer details on this external site we share with a customer, we can save up to 2 full-time workers worth of money. The platform is an order placing platform where we take customer details and input their orders in our system for processing. I said sure. Sounds great. On my second day of working on the project, I was checking the site and notice a captcha validation error on the site after trying to log in twice in quick session. CAPTCHA is a red flag in the world of automation because it's a measure to specifically prevent bots from operating on the platform. I reviewed the terms and condition of the site and lo and behold, written in all caps, there was a clause there that specifically prohibits bot usage. I emailed this to my manager and got a pretty long response about how this initiative can help our workers be more fulfilled in their work by not being bogged down by this mindless task, etc., etc. Full of neutral corporate speak, but pretty much just says, just do what I said. Okay boss. So programmed the bot to log in at specific intervals to not raise the CAPTCHA error and deployed the bot in 3 weeks. 2 months pass by without any hitches and we get an email from our partner asking why the purchase orders are being opened and processed ridiculously fast. The upper management, my boss's boss, proudly responded that we've implemented a bot and that it's a great win-win for all parties. Orders are processed faster and we save money. The partner was not happy. They immediately requested the revocation of access from our end and called in a meeting to discuss the matter and included me. I was grilled for about 5 minutes until I showed them the email I had with my manager. They quickly let me go and had a closed-door discussion after that. Now I don't know the specifics of the agreement, but from the grapevine I heard that my company had to cut a $100K check to not be sued over potential violations of data privacy. The customer had no visibility over what the bot is doing with the customer data we extract. Suffice to say, my manager lost all chances of that promotion. Sucks because he's not really a complete a-hole. He can just get real pushy on activities to try and get closer to that promotion. Next one is titled, "You sure you want me to flag your product line as not recommended?" Okay. This is our electronics hardware MC. There are literally dozens of us hardware engineers out there, so if you have questions about terminology, please ask in the comments. This happened more than a decade ago. I worked many years as a hardware developer at a big electronics company. My roles spanned the gamut for an electrical engineer, but one thing I did often was board-level design for digital circuits. This involves designing in microcontrollers, FPGAs, ASICs, RAM, and all the various power supplies necessary to provide the correct voltages to run all these components. For digital circuits, we generally didn't want to mess with custom-tuned power supplies, so when little off-the-shelf supplies with everything built in came on the market, we gave them a really close look. This one small chip company managed to work their way into our supply chain. I'm not sure how they did it. They had local offices and the sales guy was the friend of a friend or something. Regardless, their parts were convenient, small, stable, acceptably priced, so over a couple years a handful of their parts got designed into some products. Meanwhile, some of the bigger chip companies, places like Texas Instruments, started designing very similar parts, ones that were a little newer, a little smaller, a little cheaper, a little more stable. We were really incentivized to reuse parts to improve supply chain management and get volume price breaks, so despite the other options, the little guy kept winning business for a while. Eventually, I ended up in a position talking to this sales guy, and he had to tell me all about their new product line. It was a little smaller, a little cheaper, and a little more stable than their old line. It was so much better, in fact, that he told me that we shouldn't design their old products into anything again. I tried to clarify whether they planned to discontinue their old product line, or if there were known quality issues with their old line. But he did the usual sales guy thing of not really answering the question, and he just insisted that the new line was better and we should use it exclusively moving forward. Now, I don't think there was anything wrong with those old parts, and as far as I know those old products still ship with those parts today, but I couldn't get an answer clear enough to satisfy myself as an engineer. We had a way to flag parts in our internal system as not recommended for new designs. I told him that we always look internally before we design in new parts, and that I could mark the old parts as not recommended, ensuring they weren't reused. He said that was a great idea and I should absolutely do it to all their parts in our system. I clarified that it would just mark their parts as not recommended, not suggest replacements, but he insisted we shouldn't use those old parts and marking them was correct. So, given my other uncertainty, I complied, put in the change order, and this company's entire product line was marked as not recommended in our system. The fallout was pretty simple. The very next design I did, I had to design in a new supply, and the TI part had been on the market for a while at that point. They were a big, known, good partner, so it just made sense to design them in. That part had a wide variety of drop-in versions for different voltages and loads, and, since one version was in our system, it was easy to reuse its footprint and add the version needed. So for design after design, various engineers stuck with the new line. I assume that small companies' new products released eventually, they probably sent me the data sheets, but I don't think I ever spoke to that sales guy again, and my company never designed in another one of their parts. The TI parts, after all, were in our system, and we were incentivized to reuse them for supply chain management and volume price breaks. Next one is titled, "Just follow the process sheet, don't contact me again." Okay, prepare for scrap parts. I work as a technician in a lens manufacturing facility. My usual job is actually in R&D, and I work to help create the processes for new products, so I know my way around all the machines used from start to end in fabrication, and I know a lot about how processes should go to ensure the product is made correctly and to spec. Cue the shop floor requesting assistance on a project that has to get done as soon as possible, and shop machine utilization is already at %150. This isn't an uncommon occurrence, and if our small department can help, we do. Usually I'm asked to use the R&D machines to run parts in a particular step of the process, but this week they wanted a full start to finish on about 100 pieces of glass. I get the blanks in and review the process sheet and find a myriad of glaring errors. The tolerances are way off, dimensions are called out wrong, someone wrote this up hastily, and it was clearly not a developed and tested process. I halt production immediately before even touching a single piece of glass and go to the engineer who's called out on the process sheet to discuss the issue. Now, I've worked with many of the engineers in the building, as most of them have worked with my department to refine their project processes. I don't know this guy at all. I go through the proper channels and schedule a consult meeting with him, a 15-minute meeting technicians can use to talk to engineers, managers about work when a production halt is called. He ignores the meeting. I hunt him down on foot and find him in his office, where he proceeds to lecture me on interrupting him. I'm a lowly technician, he's an engineer, the process is correct, follow it or it's my butt. I'd like to note at this time that I don't work for his department, he has no effect over me in my command structure, and I'm essentially doing him and the related project manager a favor by allowing them to feed me this work. Now, normally when getting an incorrect process sheet like this, the solution is to inform the engineer, at which point they'll say, "Oh yeah, I ducked up, just make it to spec, I'm sure you know what to do, and I'll fix the paperwork." But I was told to follow the sheet. I tell my boss about my interaction with the engineer, and my boss tells me to email the engineer, and get the "follow the sheet" in writing, then to follow their instructions to the letter. I email the engineer and he goes ballistic via email. He even wrote, "Look, I have a PhD in optics, I don't need a tech with an associate's degree telling me how to do my job. Follow the process sheet, do not deviate." You got it. Not a single part met spec. I documented the case and my boss signed off on it. When the project failed to meet deadline because a process review was ordered, the engineer tried to throw me and my department under the bus. I had the production halt documentation, the engineer's email, and my boss's backing. Things did not go well. Edit: the engineer kept his job, but I heard there were some serious reprimands that came his way. The project, with not some high priority, expensive job, and the material cost to the company was comparatively low compared to the eventual income. I think the biggest issue was the waste of time and labor expenses. My hourly billable is a bit higher than shop floor technicians to get the job done. Furthermore, there was a strongly worded email about how communication between the shop technicians and engineers should be a priority to ensure quality and efficiency. Also, I think a training on interpersonal respect regardless of position was issued. Last one is titled, "Just tell me how to log my overtime." I was hired into a state job in a very small IT department, a total of one manager, one other programmer and me. Note that this was in the early 1990s. It didn't pay all that well, but the benefits of a state job were good and it was sold to me as an 8 to 5, Monday to Friday position. Within the first month, though, it was explained to me that I would be required to come in twice on the weekends to change the backup tapes. This was not mentioned in the hiring process. The other programmer had been doing it, but now that I was at the bottom rung of the ladder, the task fell to me. There were 2 large windows in which the tape changes had to take place, and the actual time spent changing the tapes was maybe 15 minutes, tops, but my commute was easily a half-hour one way. This meant at least 2.5 hours of my weekends had just disappeared. Worse, my impromptu weekend activities were severely restricted. Plus, even if I planned ahead, there was always a chance that neither one could to cover for me and I'd be stuck with it. Talking with some friends, one pointed out that if the state required me to come in on my days off, there was a minimum time that I was supposed to log into my time sheet. Like, even if it only took 15 minutes, I was to enter 2 or 3 hours on my time sheet. Actually, no one knew the exact amount, but my friend knew there was a minimum. Enter the malicious compliance. I went back to my manager and innocently asked my manager just exactly how I was to log my overtime when I came in to change the tapes. She was surprised. I pressed the issue. It's only 15 minutes a day. She was losing it. Apparently she and the other programmer lived close by and never thought it was that big of a deal. Besides, as a manager she couldn't claim overtime, but the other programmer had never claimed any overtime hours. I explained that I would claim at least 30 minutes of overtime every weekend. Overtime that was probably not in her budget. Then there was the matter of the minimum time I thought I could claim, but I didn't know how much. She dismissed me from her office saying she'd have to look into it. Apparently, she found out because I was told that it would not be my task anymore. Win. She never mentioned it again, but I noticed that she was doing the tape changes herself. Much later, L felt bad for the other programmer because there was no telling how many times he had changed the tapes with no extra compensation at all. The fallout was that at my first evaluation at 6 months, I was given a bad score and demoted. I hadn't heard any feedback that she was unhappy with my performance. I started looking for a new job right then and there. That manager received my very first resignation letter, and I was excited to hand it over. Thanks for listening.